A girl who never did her homework in 5 years of elementary school broke 50 pencils in a row during art class, but she wasn't drawing. The teacher was puzzled and came to check and found that the girl had written numbers all over the paper. The teacher reminded her that it wasn't math class, but instead of responding, the girl's writing became even more frantic. The teacher had no choice but to take away the paper and dismiss the class. The writing was interrupted, but the girl did not get angry, but silently went outside the classroom to stare at the sun. And even the teacher's call was ignored as if she had something else in mind, until the day of the school's anniversary, when the finished artwork was sealed in the ground as a gift to the new students 50 years later. Linda's expression became more and more serious as she watched from the outside. When the teacher looked back, Linda had already left. The balloon released from the sky meant that Linda hadn't simply left the room. Sure enough, she had disappeared. The school organized a search, but nothing was found from day to night. The teacher heard a noise in the basement of the school and opened the door to see Linda sitting on the floor with blood on her hands. The teacher was shocked and looked at Linda's fingers, which were still moving, and then looked at the door. Unexpectedly, Linda was trying to finish the numbers she had interrupted and kept repeating the word stop under her breath. The teacher felt numbness but didn't take it too seriously. 50 years later, the school took out the time capsule as promised and distributed the pictures inside as gifts for the new students. Some got rockets, some got flying saucers. The students were happy. But one of them, a boy, was a bit confused because he only got a piece of paper with numbers written all over it. As the boy wondered, a man in black suddenly appeared in the distance, staring at him as Carl watched. His classmates came looking for him, and when they found out that Carl had been given a piece of paper, they laughed at him for being such an unlucky guy. Carl didn't think so, but when he turned his head again, the man in black disappeared into thin air. Carl thought the numbers were not simple, so he brought the paper home and told his father it might be a math puzzle. At first, Jack did not care about it and even used the paper as a mat for the cup. But after accidentally discovering a series of familiar numbers on the paper, he decided to copy it down and study it. After a lot of dismantling and division, Jack got a set of combinations that looked like dates 910-12996. Jack went online to check the results of the day was in 01, the sensational. 911, terrorist attacks, and the number of deaths also matched the note recorded 2996. Jack thought it was a bit strange that these numbers were written in 1959, when the time capsule was dug up and he was also there that year. Could someone predict the future? In order to prove that this is just a coincidence, Jack will be all the numbers copied down with a pen 1x1 split and then entered into the computer to check again. But invariably, a world-famous catastrophe occurred on each date and the number of deaths matched. But after each date and number of deaths, there were other numbers that Jack could not decipher. But the evidence showed that these numbers could predict disasters. So the next morning, Jack came to the lab to ask his fellow astronomers for help. But they didn't believe Jack and laughed at him for being a scientist and playing with metaphysics. Jack could only show the evidence he had collected, and said that there were still 3 disasters yet to happen, and the latest one was tomorrow, and according to the records, 81 people would be killed. I thought this would make my colleague take it seriously, but the other side brought up Jack's dead wife, thinking that Jack was a single parent, overworked and delusional. Jack didn't want to explain himself, so he turned around and left the office, but he didn't give up. That night, Jack sat in front of the TV and watched the news channels to verify the disaster. He waited until the next afternoon, but there was no news of the disaster, and because he had been up all night, he forgot to pick up his son from school, seeing that it was about to rain. Jack drove to the school, but got stuck in a traffic jam. Jack turned on the navigation and tried to take a different route. But there was no way to avoid the traffic, so he had to call his son and tell him to be patient. Halfway through the conversation, Jack seems to have realized something. The coordinates on the navigation map feeling a bit familiar. He quickly took out the paper to carefully compare the number after the date is actually the coordinates or his current location. Is it because of the traffic jam in front of a dead person to cause? Jack decided to get out of the car to check, but the source is only a traffic accident. Jack asked the traffic police for details, but before he could say anything, he suddenly turned pale and ran away. Jack turned around to see what was going on.